Auto, programmed auto, aperture priority, shutter priority, or manual? What is the right mode to use, or is there even a right mode? Maybe you should just pick a random one. I think that this is an excellent lens. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma and professionally I'm a software developer, but in my free time I love landscape photography and making related videos here on YouTube. In today's video I'm going to tell you which of your camera modes you should be using. Now, if you would ask me when I was a beginner, I'd have told you that you absolutely have to use the manual mode. I started out like most people on auto mode, and when I started to learn about how the manual mode works and what shutter speed and aperture were, I became convinced that the only mode that any photographer worth their salt should be using was manual. But is that really true? I don't really think so anymore, as I've shared in the past. Now, with older cameras, you sometimes will get unpredictable results using anything but manual mode, because their metering can just be pretty inconsistent. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that all the modes on your camera actually work as they were intended. Given that, I don't actually recommend that you use manual mode anymore in most situations, but I do think that it's important to understand how to use manual mode, partly to understand the other modes, and then partly so that you can use it when you're in a situation when you might actually need to. In manual mode, you set all of the camera settings yourself, and so in any situations where the camera doesn't seem to be giving you the look that you want, then you'll need to know how to use that manual mode. But modern cameras are smart enough to get a good exposure most of the time, and so there's no point in using manual mode to come to a similar setting to what the camera is going to use itself, unless you just like doing that for some reason. On the other hand though, I still don't really recommend using auto mode either unless you are a beginner. In the auto mode, you're giving the camera complete control. Now, if you're a beginner, chances are you're going to get the best results actually in auto mode, and so for any photos that are important to you, definitely start there, but then try to learn how to use those other modes when you have more time to get a photo. Once you learn the other modes though, take back some of that control from the camera so that you can make the photos look the way that you want them to look, because it's amazing how much of a difference just a little change in the exposure can make to your photos. So we're left with three modes: programmed auto, aperture priority, and shutter priority. Which one of these you use as a little bit more of personal preference or situational. I'm a Nikon shooter, so it might be called something different by other brands, but the programmed auto mode is actually pretty similar to the auto mode because it leaves the camera in control of the shutter speed and the aperture. However, in this mode, you can take control of the ISO manually or adjust the exposure compensation, both of which are disabled in the auto mode. You can also rotate the dial through different shutter speed and aperture combinations that your camera thinks fit the scene, although I do find this slightly confusing. Programmed auto is a good mode to use for snapshots where you want to get a good average exposure each time as fast as possible, and you maybe don't care so much about being creative. Your camera will make sure that you get a photo you can use while letting you make some adjustments if you really feel the need to. To take more control, you can switch to shutter priority or aperture priority, depending on which you prefer or care about more in that situation. If you want to specify the shutter speed, you can choose shutter priority, set the shutter speed, and the camera will choose a matching aperture, and similarly for aperture priority. With both, you can tweak the exposure compensation as well. What I tend to do though is actually stick to aperture priority, and then if I want a different shutter speed, I'll just adjust my aperture and ISO until I get to the area I want. I know that's kind of a weird thing to do, and I should just switch to shutter priority, but I still find myself doing it anyway. So is there a right mode? Well, not really. If you've always used auto mode, then I'd recommend trying something else. Maybe start with programmed auto and go from there. My favorite mode is Aperture priority because I most often want to change the aperture to adjust my depth of field for different subjects. And then I rely a lot on the exposure compensation to get the exact exposure that I want. This method gives me almost all the control that I would have in manual mode, but it's just much faster because the camera picks the starting exposure for me, and then I can adjust from that. When I used to use only manual mode, I actually missed a lot of snapshots while I was spinning the dials on the camera trying to adjust the exposure. And so I just don't recommend using manual mode all of the time. But you should understand how to use it just to understand your camera better and be able to use it if you really want to go crazy with the settings. So that is going to be all for this video, but let me know in the comments what modes you guys use in your photography workflows. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button on your way out and to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more videos that I'm really excited to share with you in the future. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.